Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talk the Block, the podcast where we talk about the hit HGTV show Rock the Block. I'm Amy, and I'm here today with my amazing co-host, Stephen.
Wow, it's just getting better every week. I was esteemed, and now I'm amazing.
You are, Stephen. Every week you never cease to amaze me.
I know. I amaze myself. It's just, it's just one of those things. What can I say?
All right. So, hey, this week we are here to talk about Season 5, Episode 5, Exterior Redemption. And in this episode, we will see the finished product of the exterior design for the two duplexes. And if you remember, in week 1, they had to collaborate to figure out what those exteriors would look like. So, Stephen, do you remember that from week 1, the extensive negotiations that went on about the exteriors?
Not really. I kind of didn't pay attention. I figured we'd see the result, which is more important than worrying about the made-for-TV discussing, arguing, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. In addition to doing the exteriors, the front of the house, they also had to do the first floor, or some might call the second story, balcony, as well as the dock. And personally, I've never lived waterfront, but I've never thought of a dock as an area that was ripe for design.
My notes on that are kind of sparse, and so was the effort by the competition.
Yeah, there was only one that I think really did add value to the dock, and we'll talk about that as we go into it. So any thoughts you have about designing an exterior of a house or a dock or a deck before we dive into what the three teams did today?
Let's see. Let's start with the easiest one, the dock. I've done my share of fishing, which comes up during the show. I've had friends that had houses on the lake, and so I've hung out on docks. So I, don't really have any interest or any ideas on what I would do with a dock, besides, just kind of have it. So I don't really have any ideas there, but I took long enough to say it. I used up my quotient. The balconies are off the first floor, which means that they are off the for many of the teams, one team being different, off the kitchen and the living room. So. I think, being just an extension, Mitch, who says nobody uses their balcony, at least maybe off the bedroom. I think, and it is, there off the balcony is also a staircase that goes down to the ground floor, to the pool. So, just having it as a space that you can use on a nice night. I guess it would be hard to put netting around the whole thing, or mosquito netting around the whole thing, but just a usable space. And then as far as an exterior, nothing that, it should be nice, but not crowded, and you should be able to identify your home when you drive up to it.
Yeah, that's usually important to make sure that you've gotten to the right home. And I think you're right, Stephen. I think most of the teams really leaned into that indoor-outdoor living experience, making that deck an extension of their living room or kitchen, or both, depending on how they configured that first story of their house or first floor of their house. So, there wasn't a ton of there were some different ideas there. I should take that back. Even though they all looked to make it an extension of what they did on the inside, how they thought about extending it was different depending on the different teams. So
that's very different of you.
Thank you. I don't strive to be different, but sometimes I just am. So this week, I think, was a little sparse from a design perspective. I mean, all the other weeks, it felt like they really had to dig in and do a ton of design and a ton of work. And here it felt like the front was mostly landscaping, since a lot of the decisions about the exterior had already been made. They put some thought into the deck, but to be fair, a fair amount of that was just staging.
Yeah.
They set up the materials.
Mostly staging, yeah.
And on the deck, there wasn't a lot of interesting design. There was some, but not a lot. So I think this episode is sort of a little bit of a respite for the team, if you will, before they get into the final and they have to design all the rest of the first floor story and the ground floor, which they've done nothing with so far. So I think this was a little bit of a break, and it's going to be a sprint to the finish as we look at the next week or maybe 2 weeks. There was a teaser at the end of the show. I don't know if next week's going to be the final or not.
Yeah, they said that it wasn't the beginning of the last episode, but the beginning of a challenge. So not sure how that's going to play out, but yeah.
Okay. All right. So with that, should we dive into what our teams did this week, Stephen?
No, I think we should just randomly talk about other things. But, how about those Preds?
No, the Preds have been losing lately. We don't like that. We liked it when they were like on a 17 game with point streak. So now's not the time to lose momentum. But this is not a Predators
this is not
broadcast.
a Predators broadcast. Yeah, that's my other day job. Yes. So why don't we? Here on Talk the Block, why don't we do something different and talk about what they did on Rock the Block?
Okay, sounds good. Well, let's start with the team that really made a big bet this week and blew their budget on one big element to their home, which I would say isn't a design element, but definitely an added value to their house, and that is the Twins.
Yeah. Lindsay and Leslie decided to put in solar panels and to put in some batteries mounted on the wall in the garage that would store the energy that the solar panels gained. They also, I guess it's connected back to the power grid. So if I'm not sure how, the whole mechanics of this, I would guess that what would do is that the batteries would charge, and then as soon as the batteries are charged, it would switch over and go back out to the power grid and start, becoming a surplus of power for them. But I'm not exactly sure how the whole thing is organized. But they spent $16,000 on batteries and $24,000 on the panels themselves.
So doing some quick math, that's $40,000 on this one element in their home.
Yeah, and they usually we talk about how the teams used their bonus money. Lindsay and Leslie winning last week, they got a $4,000 bonus, and they just said that they threw it into the pot with the solar panels, which if you believe how all this works, there was some planning ahead of time about that, but. I think Paige had the comment that, and I wrote this down. She said it'll take 7 years to get a return, and if they spent that much money on this, what are they missing?
Yeah, what are they not spending in the home? So, this is one of those things where I really liken it to the elevator that the Bombers did in the first, or the Bomblers, I always pronounce their name wrong, did in the first week.
That's why I always say Sarah and Brian, or Brian and Sarah. I'm not going to even try to get to the last names. I guess it's right there.
Yeah.
If you look at it, you probably can't pronounce it. It's like a town near where we used to live. And it's not coming to the name now. But if you look at how it's spelled, you'll never pronounce it correctly.
Okay, so anyway, Sarah and Brian put in an elevator in the first week, which was a $35,000 expense, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And that did not help them win the first week because it's not really a design element that enhanced their kitchen or dining room. But it will, I believe, enhance the livability and the ultimate value of their home. And I think with the solar panels, it's very similar. This did nothing to improve their design of their exterior, but it does add value to the home. So we will see at the end when they, add up all the figures and figure out the appraised value of the home, how these solar panels will impact their overall placement.
Yeah. They're on the roof. They had
really
21
they put
panels.
the solar panels on the roof.
They did.
Stephen?
They did. Wow.
That's innovative. Yeah.
Very. Yeah. So they get these 21 panels. I don't know what the math are. Years ago, I was part of a green consortium, and we got a lot of presentations on solar panels and other green energy or green efforts. But 7 years to get a return is probably probably currently about it. I don't really know what the numbers are, but they started out this week with $55,000, and they spent their spend intent was 50 to leave them with 5K remaining for next week. So not only have they did they handicap themselves for this week, and they're a very strident pair, and so they were very upset that this solar panel thing didn't give them the win this week. But I think, as you said, it's more of a long-term play overall, and you can't really expect to win the landscaping and dock and balcony challenge when you're putting solar panels on your roof.
Yeah, and I think my fear is that they handicap themselves for next week.
Oh, yeah, they have the least money of anybody.
Yeah, they only have $5,000 left to finish the house, so they've got
which is probably a couple of bedrooms upstairs, whatever else is on the third floor.
Oh, yeah, there's a
second floor, whatever.
On the second floor, there's at least 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. I'm not exactly sure, but that would be the minimum. And they've got whatever they're going to do on that ground floor, which, of course, the garage is there, but I also think there's potentially some living space behind the garage that one could do something with. So they have very little money left to handle all of those design elements. So this was a really risky decision to spend this much on the solar panels. We'll have to see whether it pays off at the end.
Yeah, and as you were saying when we were talking about it, Brian and Sarah, I'll just give it away, they won. The prize money this week being $5,000, most of the teams only have 10 left. So, so as far as it being a percentage of the pot, it's a big win getting it this week. And maybe Lindsay and Leslie were so sure that putting solar panels on the roof would help them win the landscape challenge that they threw all their eggs in the one basket.
Okay, well, let's talk about what else Lindsay and Leslie did in their design this week. So first of all, Leslie and Leslie are in the same duplex as Sarah and Brian.
Yep, house number 3.
House number 3, and I did prefer the overall exterior look of this duplex over the other one, which is shared by Paige and Mitch and Keith and Evan.
Yeah, there's basically each house has 2 fronts. They're kind of offset a little bit. And so in both cases, the inner fronts of the houses are one color, and the outer fronts are the different color. And then over the door would be the inner color again. And so with the team with houses 3 and 4, Sarah, Brian, and the twins, it was I think Paige called it a charcoal. So it was a dark color with like a pine color on the other. And the same pine color was used by Paige and Mitch and Keith and Evan. So I think that there was probably something that they had to use that one. And so the real decision was what they were going to do with the off side. And so I thought, the houses 1 and 2 had white and the pine. And I thought that the charcoal and the pine looked a lot better.
I liked it better, too. I just thought it was more, it was more
luxury?
Of a contrast. It was more luxury. It spoke luxury to me. The other thing that I really liked better about duplex 3 and 4 versus 1 and 2 is they went with a lighter gray in the driveway. 1 and 2 went with a very dark charcoal gray for the driveway. They did do this nice herringbone pattern that matched the herringbone pattern on the garage door, and that was one of the things that the judges pointed out in duplex 1 and 2. But I'm kind of with whoever, I can't remember who said it, that having very dark pavers on a driveway in Florida where it's hot is going to really radiate that heat. And if you ever happen to be in a situation where you were barefoot on that driveway, it's going to be super hot. And I also just thought the light gray looked more inviting. It looked better with the house. It was, my personal preference was more toward the exterior on 3 and 4.
Yeah, I thought the herringbone pattern, and it had to be the pavers that they used, the gaps between the stones was much larger. So, I guess maybe that's just a byproduct of doing the herringbone pattern, although it looked like maybe the brick sizes were the same. But it just looked more refined in houses 3 and 4 than with the with the dark color. So yeah, I agree. That looked pretty good.
Well, and another potential challenge with those gaps is in our home in Seattle, we had like small brick pavers in a very attractive pattern in our driveway that weeds were constantly growing through. I was out there with Roundup every year, trying to get rid of those weeds. And it is really a pain when you think about like all those little pavers and every one of them have weeds growing up in between. So, who knows? Maybe they did something really clever to seal off the ground before they put those pavers on. But when I saw those gaps, all I could think of was weeds growing out between them.
Yeah, hopefully. We in one of our flower beds, I put down this mesh that was supposed to keep things from coming up, and so maybe they put that down below the pails. But the town I was trying to think of earlier, Puyallup, Washington. If you see how it's spelled, you will never pronounce it correctly.
I thought it was pronounced Puyallup.
Puyallup. I'm going to Puyallup all up.
Okay, so getting back to the twins, we really liked like the light wood, charcoal, and then the light gray driveway color pattern of their home. Unfortunately, they made what our designer would say was a classic mistake in introducing yet a fourth texture to this pattern by putting a walnut front door. And I love walnut. It was a beautiful front door.
Oh, yeah.
It did not match with this house. Completely different color and material, and Connie would have an answer.
Yeah, well, I disagree with Connie on that rule anyway. She wanted to make sure. She wanted to use, back when we just did our bathroom remodel, she wanted to use our floor tile as the wall tile in the shower because you can't have more than 3 tile. And, we already had the quartzite, so... we didn't do that.
But anyway, in this case, I did think it looked like there was a beautiful door that didn't belong on that house.
Yes, that was it was a beautiful door. The one architectural thing that I noticed is that the garage door had on the right side, it had horizontal windows going up the side, and that design was in the front door. The front door has horizontal slots for the glass, and so that architectural part kind of was reflected there, but it did look like it didn't belong.
Yeah, and they spent $7,400 on those doors. So given that they're working on a highly constrained budget,
walnut's expensive.
Yeah, it is.
We found out.
So maybe that wasn't the best use of their money right there.
Yeah, they're using money correctly is not really their
forte.
Their forte. Their strength is not using money correctly.
Now. Yeah, that's.
Why does it say wasted it? But that's not just they're not. Anyway, moving on. So
let's go to a space where they spent almost no money. The dock.
And now we're done with that because that's as much time as they spent on it. Hey, let's just throw it. They spent like $380 on yoga equipment. What? I mean, it has to be the most expensive because it was like a mat and a couple of bricks. Now I don't know where they're shot. It's supposedly Wayfair, right? I mean, I'm guessing they got this from Wayfair, but that just tells me don't buy yoga equipment from Wayfair.
Yeah,
they're not sponsoring us either, and they're probably not going to after that comment. But.
Their deck design consisted of a kind of cheap-looking bench and a couple yoga mats and like a little carpet or something.
My notes have 3 words in it.
What?
Yoga, bench, plants. And it was pathetic.
Yeah.
Frankly, it was quite pathetic, and it was stark difference because Brian and Sarah actually did something meaningful with their side of the dock. For those, I'm sure the people listening to this have watched the show, but there are 2 docks, one for each set of houses, and so the dock for house 3 and 4, they get half of it, so they're connected.
Yeah, so we had a really extensive build out on Sarah and Brian's dock that was connected to Lindsay and Leslie's dock that had a yoga mat.
Yeah.
So not that space was not a winner for them. And now let's move on to their balcony.
Yeah, their balcony was where I think they did more work than anything because we noted we're not commenting on their front landscape because, again, they didn't do anything there. For the front landscape, I have one word: plants. $640, and the only thing that the judges had to say was that they should have had more colors, and that was a throwaway line, if you ask me.
It was fine landscaping. There wasn't anything that was particularly remarkable about it, at least in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not looking for a whole lot out of the landscaping in the front. My belief is less than more, but it didn't. It looked like they had to do something. They did something that didn't look intentional.
But for some reason, they decided to add landscaping to the back of their house.
Oh my God! Yeah. Oh yeah, there was a art project. There was an art project. There was some challenge. It wasn't a challenge, but they were taken somewhere, and I didn't write down where it was. It reminded me of some artwork that I saw at a transfer station once, where. A long time ago, I was on the King County Solid Waste Advisory Committee, which is in charge of trash in the greater King County area. And so I was in transfer stations a lot, and they had all these art projects out there. And I just had, again, PTSD, because here at this transfer station, they had this really kind of aerial artwork. And so they took the teams out to this aerial artwork in the middle of the night, and then told them that they had to find a local artist and spend $1,000 on a project.
Well, they gave them $1,000.
Gave them $1,000.
So
they had bonus $1,000 this week. So
they got an extra $1,000 to collaborate on an art project. And so Lindsay and Leslie found somebody who had the job title of plant artist. And
there were 2 plant artists.
I didn't know there was such a thing as a plant artist, Stephen. I never heard that as a career choice before.
No. And, geez. So, what are you thinking when you're on your balcony, or better yet, when you're downstairs below the balcony? What would you like better than plants hanging down? So that's what they did with their $1,000.
Yeah, they basically had a vertical garden that was off the front of that balcony that kind of hung down toward the patio on the ground floor, I guess.
Yeah.
I like plants. I'm a big fan of plants and greenery and what have you. And this was the vertical garden, again, with an irrigation system. But all I could think of is my sister in California, when she bought her house, they had all kinds of plants and vines growing up along the side of the house, like that were decorative. Well, not only were they decorative, they were very welcoming to rodents in the area who felt it was important to nest in all of this greenery that was growing up against the house. So when she moved in, they had to tear it all down. It was very difficult, a lot of backbreaking work for them, but they had to do it. So when I see this greenery sort of hanging off from the house, I can think of this as a nesting place for birds, for insects, potentially for rodents, right? And so maybe you think, hey, Amy, you're looking at the glass half empty, you really should focus on the beautiful greenery. But I don't know. I just didn't think it looked all that great off the front of the balcony. And I think the risk was maybe not worth the beauty of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't appreciate it. I also, they put a irrigation system in on a timer, and I'm not sure what the water source is. Again, if it's coming from the house, this would have had to been planned out ahead of time, right? Because the plumbing would have to be in there, because with your $1,000 to do this plant artistry, you're not going to be able to do the plumbing work either. So the whole mechanics of the situation didn't seem right, and it didn't look good. I'll be honest with you. When we're looking at it from the side, I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I much prefer the look of, let's say, Keith and Evan's backyard, which was very clean and classic, as opposed to sort of these plants hanging down. So everyone, your mileage may be different, but that was my opinion there. So on the rest of the balcony, they pretty much extended the kitchen out with a little sort of outdoor kitchen space. Where they had a refrigerator and a counter. They did have a grill on that outdoor kitchen space, and they also had a grill downstairs in their ground floor covered patio. They were the only team that had 2 grills. Everyone else either made a decision, grill upstairs or grill downstairs. Maybe that's an added benefit to have 2 grills. For me personally, that's 2 grills that I'd have to keep clean. So I kind of think you could get away with 1 grill in this space, especially since there was a staircase from the first floor balcony down to the ground floor. But what did you think, Stephen? Did you like the fact that they had an extra grill on that balcony?
I kind of go back and forth on this because in 3 of the homes, the kitchen is right there at the balcony anyway. So you're very close, 10 feet maybe. So having the grill out on the deck, it's if you really like grilling and you really want to do it outside and you're just doing it for yourself, it's convenient for it to be right there on your balcony. If you're entertaining, you've got the grill downstairs, unless you're Paige and Mitch, who don't have the grill downstairs, which I think was a miss anyway. So, it's interesting, the different teams, because of Brian and Sarah, their kitchen is, at the back, is far away from the balcony, and they didn't put a grill out there. I think they were the ones that probably could have benefited more from having the grill there. But, especially since downstairs you've got the teppanyaki grill, not a regular grill. So, I think that they could have balanced that out by the distance between the kitchen and the balcony, and having the teppanyaki grill. They had to grill on the balcony. I think that would have been a good idea. They didn't do that. But yeah, I just kind of, for me, it with the kitchen right there, it just seems a little redundant. You don't have to have it. If you have it, it's nice. None of the grills were that big. So now that I think about it, Stephen, I kind of agree with you. If there was one team that could have used 2 grills, it probably would have been Sarah and Brian, because they had that teppanyaki grill on the bottom floor. So having more of a traditional gas grill on the balcony, such a specific thing.
But I think Leslie and Leslie went with the gas grill on the ground floor and on the balcony. And again, given that they were dealing with a very limited budget, not sure that's the choice I would have made.
Yeah. Yep. They did. Talking about Leslie and Lindsay, they did put shades on their sliders.
Yes.
So I think that was a good call. $1,500 on that. They're automatic. The custom bar and plants. The custom bar, they said, was $1,360. Sure.
I thought the shades were a good idea, because I think these duplexes, that balcony face west, so you are going to get that afternoon sun beating on you. So having those shades might be pretty nice in the Florida sun.
I think they were the only ones that put 2 ceiling fans up there too, and that balcony's pretty long, for the small fans, for the small space that they had to put a fan. So I think having a fan on both sides is a good idea. So I didn't exactly like the look of them. That's a very, but you did like the look of the fans. I didn't.
Yeah, I liked them.
But they had 2, which I think was smart. So.
Yeah. So anyway, in short, Lindsay and Leslie, they made a big investment in the solar panels, which didn't pay off for them this week. And I think because they spent so much money on the solar panels, the rest of their design suffered a little bit. They just didn't have enough money maybe to go the extra mile like the other teams did.
Yeah, and I'm going to call them out for what they did on the dock, but just previewing, the dock was, for most of the teams except for Brian and Sarah, a throwaway space. I didn't think any of the teams did anything that interesting, so they didn't. So they stayed in line with what the 3 teams that do the same thing. Kind of all did the same thing. So they're marching along with them. The landscaping was whatever. They did a couple of things on the balcony, but yeah, it's hard to see. And I don't believe that I don't think that the solar panels are going to pay off for them. But
we shall see.
$40,000 for that versus $35,000 for an elevator. I'll take the elevator. I took the elevator down here today. I take the elevator every time.
The elevator would have more value for me in a 3-story duplex. But again, different people have different values about these things. So Before we move on to Keith and Evan, I want to bounce back to something we talked about last week, which is the fact that all the teams wear the same outfit through the whole show.
Yeah, speaking of Keith and Evan.
Yeah, exactly. So we found out, we did a little research, guys, and we found out that the reason they all wear the same outfit is to make it easier for the editors, right? So they can cut in interviews on different days. Maybe if they have to do pickups or something like that, they don't have to worry about continuity that they're wearing different clothes. But we made a discovery this week. Sometimes Keith has paint on his shorts, and sometimes the shorts are clean. Now, this is a future research project for us to go through the entire season and map out when his shorts are clean and when they have paint and how much paint they have from cut to cut.
Oh, that was a pickup. He doesn't have paint on his shorts.
But we did notice that there were definitely some scenes where there was quite a bit of paint on his short, and then when it came time for the judging, he had clean, paint-free shorts on. So,
yeah, and I mean, to your point about the fact that they're wearing the same clothes, you noticed that when Lindsay and Leslie went out on their balcony to discuss what they were going to do, they went through the old French doors. They didn't go through the sliders that are there now. So obviously, that part of it was filmed maybe, before they started doing anything. But since they had the same clothes, you kind of miss it. But yeah, they picked up on the fact that that was not the same doors. So.
Yes, we caught something. Clearly, they were talking about what they were going to do on that balcony before they had finished the kitchen area where they put the sliders in. So this just buttresses our theory that they really figure out most of the design before the show and order materials and what have you. And then maybe they do the work in the 1 week period, but they're certainly not doing all the design, starting with a clean slate every week and doing the design and ordering everything.
Yeah, this week caught a couple of swear they had to be production assistants, out in there working, and as Amy said when we were watching it, that they're probably doing a lot of work during the week. You just don't catch them on camera, but we happen to catch them putting some of the staging out.
Okay, so let's move on and talk about what Keith and Evan did this week. So as we already mentioned, they are in house number 2.
With Paige and Mitch.
So they had the dark herringbone driveway, the dark garage door with also a herringbone pattern, and then they had white and wood as the colors for the exterior of the house. Mm-hmm. They went with a white door for their house that was a single door with glass panels on either side.
Yep.
I didn't love this. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, they were the only team that didn't have the double door, and I think the double door looks better. Although there was nothing wrong with the look, and I'm sure it's a nice white door, so it's all we have got here. I mean, it's kind of mimics what we have here, except ours isn't white. Yeah, and this team, they had the dark, and Keith and Evan called out that it is Clopay. We love Clopay here on the Talk the Block show.
Clopay, please sponsor us.
We have different sponsorships levels, just so you know. But anyway, so in this case, they had windows going across the top as opposed to down the side, like houses 3 and 4. It's kind of interesting just looking at how they do this. Houses 3 and 4, the doors were mounted so that the windows were on the inside. So for both houses, they were kind of side by side. That was just interesting to see how they coordinated on how they mounted the doors so that it looked right.
Okay. But what I didn't like, I thought it was a fine door, but I wish they would have used a dark color for the door rather than white, because the door didn't really stand out. And other teams like Paige and Mitch and Sarah and Brian really matched the door frame to the garage door.
Yeah.
And I just thought that looked a little sharper to have that contrast there on the front porch.
Yeah. I agree. It wasn't the best looking door. There's nothing wrong with it. The call out that they made, which was completely lost on me, was in their landscaping, they put this tree in the corner. So all of the driveways come up to a hard edge, and then there's a sidewalk that goes off. So it's a nice hard corner there. And they put a tree there. And the judges called out, "Oh, yes, nice architectural element." And I'm like, it's lost on me. I have no idea what the hell they were Excuse me.
we don't know anything about architectural elements. We'd have to
Pardon my
talk to,
language.
maybe we could talk to Uncle Doug about that and see what he has to say, but we didn't really,
That's
we're like,
true.
okay,
We should have
it's
watched that
architectural.
before we saw him last weekend.
Yeah. It would have been a nice table time conversation at Easter. But anyway, so, they did do some landscaping in the front. I thought it looked good. I liked that tree there. I don't know why it was architectural, but hey, others said it was, so whatever.
Yeah, the pictures of their landscaping looked fine. The front of the house looks fine. It was interesting seeing the two different, house 1-2 versus 3-4, and I did think 3-4 looked better.
Okay.
But
All right, so moving back to their deck. When they first looked at their deck, their first idea...
Dock?
Not deck, dock. Dock.
Dock.
It's confusing. We're going to the dock, the thing that is over the water, yeah. So their first thought about this dock, I thought was a terrible idea, and thank goodness they didn't execute it. They wanted to
They
have
had a worse idea than what they did?
They wanted to have a drink cart out there.
Well, I think they just didn't get it. I think that all they just did was just not do that. I think they did everything they were going to do except have that little beverage cart. I mean, they actually had a picture of it when they were showing the rendering. So they must have
run out of money for the beverage cart.
Mean, because they did have when they were talking about it, there was a picture of it on there, and maybe artist rendering or whatnot, but I don't know. Their whole idea of, you come off the boat and you can walk over there and get a drink. A drink from what? There's no ice. There's no stores of alcohol, place to store alcohol. Or even water. There's not. Where are you? And they even though they didn't have the beverage cart, when they did the judging, they kept the same storyline. Oh, yes, you come off the boat and here you can have a drink. And what? There was a bar, a place to sit. But
yes, and clearly, like how Keith and Evan envision using this dock and using their boat on the water is quite different from Sarah and Brian. Sarah and Brian are all like, we're going to be out there fishing, we're going to come back with fish, we're going to have to clean them, we're going to be dirty, etc. I think Evan and Keith were thinking, oh, we'll be cruising around in our boat, not fishing, not getting dirty, and we'll get off the boat after our relaxing cruise and have a relaxing cocktail. And personally, I think both of these are legitimate things that one might do if one has a house on the water. I'd probably lean more to the cruise around and have a drink, and Stephen might lean more toward let's go fishing. But you go fishing, but when you get off the boat, you start drinking. They not that those two things are separated, or you've been drinking while you've been fishing. It depends on how long you've been out on the boat. But anyway, their only sort of substantial improvement to the dock was putting a small semi-permanent, I don't know why I can't talk today, sort of bar counter space on the edge of the dock that's over the water. And then they had a few stools there and, I don't know, maybe a plant or two and a couple of chairs. But the only real permanent attachment was this small little bar that they built at the end of the dock.
Yeah, it was like, and it looked nice. And fortunately, there were 3 chairs there, and you would be sitting there looking out at the view, and as opposed to facing the wrong direction. And it was like they started down the path of having a good idea, and they just ran out of steam and gave up.
Okay.
That's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah. So as we mentioned before, each team got an extra $1,000 that they could use to collaborate with a local artist and do some sort of art project for their home. And Stephen, I think you felt like Keith and Evan made the best use of that $1,000 art project.
Well, it's surprising, right? Because they're like the art guys. But I guess they only appreciate art if they do it. So I don't know. And maybe that's a little harsh. But yeah, I thought that they found a place that did glass blowing and taught people how to do it. And so they showed Keith and Evan going to this glass blowing place, and then they created a light fixture, kind of basically a shade for a light, right? So I thought that was, I think if you're forced to do one of these challenges, I thought that they actually did a reasonable thing. They were going to have a light. They needed to have some sort of shade for it. And they, used this opportunity to do this. And so then it doesn't just stand out. One of the teams did something that I thought was just ridiculous.
We'll get to that
and
in
that
a
was
minute,
not
yeah.
the Leslie and Lindsay who also did something a little ridiculous. So I thought, as opposed to what some of the other teams did, given what we're used to seeing with Keith and Evan, I thought they were really restrained and were smart about it.
Yeah, it was surprising. And so, this little chandelier that they did with the blown glass was up on their balcony. And I liked what they did with their balcony. They were very deliberate about pulling the living room side of the indoor space to the outside and pulling the kitchen part of the indoor space to the outside. They did an outdoor kitchen without a grill because they had their grill
right.
was downstairs, and sort of an outdoor living space with a surprising amount of restraint on the furnishings that they used. They did not
they didn't
cram a lot of furniture this time.
No cramming this week.
And the other thing that they did that I really liked is they had wood paneling on the floor of the balcony, and they used that same wood paneling on the ceiling of the balcony. So that gave it a real sort of put together look, I thought, that the other teams didn't have.
Yeah, if you remember, they have a wall between their kitchen and the living spaces. So, and then there's two separate doors, and so the mentality of the space that was attached to the balcony is what they incorporated on each of the halves, and I think they did pretty good. They only had the one ceiling fan, which was over the side of the living space. The little chandelier was off the kitchen. They had a fridge out on their deck, which I think. Whatever. The kitchen's right there. I mean, it's 10 feet away, 10 steps and you're at the fridge, the bigger fridge inside. So I don't know. I'm not, that part I'm not so wild about. And, I could be wrong. I frequently am. So.
Well, and I think the fully articulating glass doors
Yeah,
really paid off
right.
here.
Yep,
They did
yep,
that in
yep,
week
yep.
one, and then you could really see the value of those on the balcony. And they said that their goal was to make the indoors feel bigger, and I think they achieved that with what they did on their deck.
They did a really good job this week. What do I have? They started this week with $40K, so they had a little bit less than the other teams, and they said the goal was to spend $30K, so they have $10K left, and I think they. I'm not sure where they spent $30K, $4,600 on the decking that they used on the floor and the ceiling. But I think they were smart. I think they did really well. Their staging looked nice. I think they did a really good job this week.
And so if you're keeping score, Lindsay and Leslie have $5,000 left to complete their house. Keith and Evan actually have double that amount. They have $10,000, which still in the real world, when you think about how much things really cost, is not a lot of money to complete 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and, whatever they're going to do in the garage and downstairs area. But, in the magical world of HGTV, maybe it's a good amount of money. And at least Keith and Evan have twice the money that Lindsay and Leslie have at this point to go into next week.
Yeah, I think what it seems like, again, we are not affiliated with the show. We're just making random guesses like everybody else. It's just we're talking to the microphones and you're listening. So one of my random thoughts, because they talk every now and then, and the twins did this, said this specifically, and they said that they were going to spend a certain amount of money, but that because of that, they were going to have to put more time in themselves. And so I think I don't really believe they're getting charged, the relevant rate to have people in there working and doing stuff. But I think that there is an allowance that they're given on how much of their budget gets allocated to having people help them. So next week, I think what we're going to see is that they're going to have to be more active in doing things. I think it was the week that they were doing the front of the house on the first floor. They were having to put up the tile themselves, quote unquote, put up the tile themselves because they had spent money someplace else. So I think we'll see that next week is where they're going to be doing more of the work.
Okay. Well, should we move along to Paige and Mitch?
Why not?
Okay. So Paige and Mitch were in house number 1.
One.
And so again, this is not the exterior design that we preferred. However, they made a really smart choice, in my opinion, with their front door. They used a dark frame, which matched the garage door with glass, were they frosted glass doors?
Yeah,
Peter?
everything frosted, yeah.
Yeah, and so I thought that looked beautiful. The one thing that I probably would have done differently on the front of the house is to put some sort of tall plants or something alongside their little landing area to the front door, because they've got, if you recall, all those apartments and townhouses and what have you, to the left of where they are. I might have put up something there, bushes, plants, whatever, that would give me a little bit more privacy as I was going into my house.
Yeah, the view that we had from the front of the house when they're showing the exterior, you can clearly see those apartments, condos, whatever they are, and consequently, they have a view up front to your front yard. So I know maybe not everybody is so onto privacy, but I think maintaining a buffer and a barrier would have been nice. So having some tall landscaping off to the side that would have occluded the view to the front, I think would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that.
And one thing I was really sad about, in their initial drawing, they showed an overhang over that front porch.
Yeah, nobody did that.
I was so happy because, we lived in a house in Seattle that for many years didn't have an overhang. And you might have heard it rains in Seattle. It also, I believe, rains in Florida. And let's say you're a household that likes to say, get Amazon packages or maybe occasionally have a guest over. Having a little overhang there is great. It keeps your packages dry. It keeps your friends dry while you come down to answer the door. So they thought of that. I guess, I don't know why, maybe for budget reasons, they didn't end up executing on that idea, which was a disappointment to me.
Yeah, I think that was a miss on all the teams too. And, kind of interesting. When we started trying to do that with our house, actually, the first couple of people I had come out to look at it, they looked at the house and they said, "You can't do that. There's no way to do it." And I'd be like, "What do you mean?" "Well, you just can't." And in order to get that done, we wound up having to do that and replace our front door when we did our bedroom bathroom remodel, because we couldn't get anybody to do a small project like that. I mean, the number of people available to work and do this type of thing, it seems to be very small.
And again, this was Uncle Doug to the rescue.
Oh, yeah,
who actually
He
did
came
the
up with the design.
architectural drawings for that front porch and how we could do an overhang on it.
Yeah. It's nice having people in your family who are very skilled that you can leverage for free.
Yeah, highly recommended if you have an architect in your family. Yeah.
We just handed it over to the design build company that we're doing our bedroom, and they just did it.
Yeah, so that worked out great.
Yeah.
So anyway, no overhang here.
Nope.
However, they made some interesting choices on their dock. So they actually did do a couple of things to, let's put it in quotes, improve their dock. They did what they call a dock hammock, which was actually an extra structure to the left of the dock, which was basically a bunch of 2x6s in a frame with a net in the middle of it.
2x6 frame with a net in it. And then they threw some pillows.
And that was their hammock. And then they used their art project money to do a rather large metal sculpture that was supposed to represent fire and ice. I actually thought the sculpture was pretty cool. Stephen, I don't think you necessarily agreed, but I liked it. I just wondered why they put it on the dock.
Because it's next to the water.
I guess. I mean, I might have liked that in the front of the house, but they chose to put it on the dock.
Yeah. So, I don't know what artisans that they necessarily had a pick from, but they, from the standpoint of you've got this extra money, you've got to do something. I mean, they did nothing more than hammer a bunch of 2x6s up there and throw a net in it, and they could have tried to find an artist who could take that and then maybe drape some art over it or something, such that it looked more finished, and then that way they could have had something that they could have used their art money for something that had meaning instead of putting something on the end of your dock, so that people know which dock is yours.
Well, I guess if you are out drinking on your boat, that's helpful to have it marked like that. But I think that hammock idea really hurt them more than helped them, because the judges specifically called that out as looking unfinished. And personally, I don't think I'd ever lay in that hammock. It did not look comfortable. It was like basically rope that would eat into my back.
I think getting in and out of it, because it was
I would have
below
ended
the
up
level.
in the water.
And looking at that, going, I ain't getting in that thing. That did not look inviting or anything. And maybe this is just us, but, I imagine if we were living there, we would have so many friends that had boats that were coming over to our house, and having the hammock there takes away a mooring spot for one of our friends' boats. And so I think that would have been severely inconveniencing.
I like this.
We'd have to have a boat valet.
I like this fantasy life where we live on the water there, and our friends are always boating over
they're always
to visit
jetting over on their boats.
All right, well, let's talk about Paige and Mitch.
Oh, they did have a fire pit on. One thing that they did do is they did have a fire table or something on there that did look good, but other than that, it was just throwaway piece, just like Lindsay.
And it was a little disjoint. They had a statue, they had an unfinished looking hammock, they had a fire table. I mean, none of it really seemed to fit together.
I have like 6 words down for them, up from 2 for one of those and 3 for the other. So, this dock space really kind of fluxsummoned these designers.
Fluxsummoned?
I don't know.
Is that a word?
It's a word. It may not mean what I think it. I don't think that word means what you think it does.
Anyway, let's talk about their balcony. So if you recall, when they did their kitchen design, they had a pass-through bar to the balcony. So there was a counter that went both inside and outside, and a folding window that went across that. So this week was the payoff for that, where they had the counter on the outside and the chairs. And then they used the other half of the balcony. They had more comfy chairs. And then on the wall, furthest from the kitchen, they had their outdoor kitchen and grill.
Yep.
So what do you think about this design and this layout, Stephen?
As I think I was very clear about earlier, I'm unclear as to my feelings on the grill. I did have to laugh that they put a grill up there and they didn't put a grill downstairs. I think, if you were only going to have one grill, I would put it downstairs.
Agreed.
And whether it was on the side with the kitchen, because you had to walk through the living room to get to the outside, I say you would be walking by the grill, and so actually having the grill over on the outside wall made more sense. On the inside wall would also be the stairs. There did look like there was room to put things against the wall without impeding the stairs, and they had a planter which looked fine, that was there. So I think the grill could have been over there, and I know you would prefer it over there because then it would be easier to pass the food back and forth.
Well, then you could pass things through that pass-through kitchen. Yeah. If you had a plate of steaks or hamburgers or whatever, you could just pass those through, and whoever was grilling, or if you were grilling outside and I was in the kitchen and you needed something, I could just hand it to you. Yeah. So I would have preferred that.
Yeah. I'm ambivalent.
The other thing I would have preferred, and this is a small thing, but why not swivel chairs on the bar?
Yeah,
right?
total miss. Yep. Total miss.
So you could spin around and look at the water, while you're sitting there enjoying your cocktail. That would have been nice. Now I did like they put some interesting green tile underneath the bar outside. Yep. Which I thought looked
it looked
good.
stupid when I saw the tile, but yeah, it looked all right. When I saw the picture of it, it's green tile, and they used a white grout, so the pattern really stood out. And okay, yeah, I've seen that before, but it looked okay.
Yeah, so, overall, good job. I think they could have done more to really capitalize on that outdoor counter that they had. I think, and thinking about how to incorporate that with the whole design, it just wasn't quite as useful, or, I don't know, maybe relaxing of a space as I thought it would be.
I think that since there was seating over there, they didn't want to clutter the space up by cramming furniture in there. That's what Keith and Evan do. But
they didn't do it this week.
They didn't do it this week. I don't think they had a ceiling fan out there. So I think that would have been a good idea. I don't have it in my notes, and I was looking specifically for it, but maybe I just missed it when we came to Paige and Mitch. But I think they did a pretty good job. They totally missed on the dock. The landscaping, I think, was fine. None of the teams really did a whole lot. I think as far as plants go, I think Brian and Sarah probably had the most, followed by Keith and Evan.
Mm-hmm. So, I would agree with
that. I think Paige and Mitch did pretty well. There's, the three spaces are very separated, very distinct, and they got to do them at some time. So they kind of, just threw these three things into the same week because I guess they had to do something with them.
Okay, so should we move on to the winning team for the week, Brian and Sarah?
Oh, why not? Let's just round the whole show out. I have a lot of notes on them. Some of these teams I barely have any words at all. But Oh, Stephen,
I forgot to take a break. Oh no. Well, let's take a short break before we go on to Brian and Sarah, and we apologize if we didn't take a break earlier. Okay, time for a quick break.
And we're back. That's so weird. But it seemed to work when we were listening to the show, last week's show, our show. We took a break, and they put the ads right there. And other weeks, I thought I had moved them around, but maybe they were after they're published. You can't, I can move the ads around, but they don't go out to the different places. But because we took a break, they stuck the ads where, we were expecting them instead of just interrupting the podcast. So, we're just learning here. If you found that annoying, it's just all part of our learning process. So.
That's right. So hopefully we're improving from week to week, but feel free to give us feedback on how great we're doing. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, and if you've got a problem with what we're doing, just keep it to yourself.
Okay, so one thing that we have not discussed, and it just befuddled us the entire episode.
Yeah, no clue.
For
None.
some reason, each of these houses had a rather large, rather ugly electrical box
the power meter
on the front porch,
yeah.
Right?
Power meter on the front porch.
So as you're walking up to the house, the first thing you see is the power meter.
Yeah.
And we couldn't understand why it was there.
No idea. No clue. I mean, right by the front door.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous to put it there. Maybe that's how Rock the Block got these houses, because the idiot that built these things to begin with put the power meter there, and nobody was going to buy them with a stupid power meter right off the front door. I don't know. But it's the dumbest thing I've seen. I mean, I think, now all these meters are mostly, in most communities, and especially those affluent ones, the meters are read remotely, either by a guy driving down your street, or it's just sending the data back to the power company. And so there's nobody going to come up there and take a look at it. There's no reason for it to be someplace where you have to find it. And it could have been on the outside of the house, not, not the outside of the garage. So it makes no sense where they put this at all.
So anyway, Sarah apparently agreed with us and really did not like where that power meter was. So for her art project, she brought in I don't think it was another plant artist.
It was another plant artist, yes.
Who put a bonsai tree there and a rock garden. And I think it was a good idea in that bonsai tree really did...
It's bonsai.
Bonsai?
It's not bonsai. It's bonsai. Anyway,
that tree really hid the electrical box as it was supposed to.
Oh yeah, it hid the electrical box. It hid half of the front door.
Well, it wasn't so. I thought it was a good idea. I thought the execution could have been better, because the rock garden was probably twice the width of the planter that the tree was in.
Yeah, it was as wide as the front door. as half of the door.
So they had double doors, and
Right, one at
basically
the
the left half of their double door was obscured by this rock garden slash bonsai tree. And I think they could have just put the bonsai tree up there in the planter without the rock garden, or just maybe made the rock garden smaller, like made it the same width as the planter, and maybe, took it the whole length of the porch there.
Yeah, it may not have cost $1,000 and been sufficient of an art project, but
yeah, I think that would have, because I do think having that planter in front of half the door was a little bit cumbersome. But they did do their job of obscuring the electrical box, which nobody else thought of doing. So I've got to give them points for at least
they
trying
didn't
to come
do
up with
it. Whether
something.
they thought of it, I don't know. But they didn't do it. And we were kind of looking for it because she called it out, and it was one of the things that happened early in the episode, and they weren't very spending a lot of time on the front door, so so it was hard to judge whether everybody had the same problem. But then when they did the reveal and they'd go up and they show the door, you get a quick glimpse of here's this big meter right up the side. So all the teams had to deal with it. Sarah's the only one that did something about it.
And I bet when these houses get sold, the other homeowners who buy them will look at that tree there, and I bet there'll be more bonsai trees on the block. I don't know if there'll be more rock gardens, but I bet more people will come up with ways to kind of obscure that once they see that's
something.
what Sarah did. Mm-hmm. Okay, the other place that I think Sarah and Brian really did something different that none of the other teams did was on the dock, because they actually did something with the dock.
Yeah.
Since they live in Florida, they like to fish. Their kids like to fish. They thought, wouldn't it be great to have a fish cleaning station on the dock, right? So that you get off the boat, you can clean your fish, the, innards or whatever from the fish. I'm not a fish cleaner myself. Entrails could go right into the water and sort of be recycled there, so you wouldn't have to worry about having these smelly fish and smelly entrails up by your house. Mm-hmm. So it seemed like a pretty good idea. And then they wanted to have a grill on the table there so that you could get off the boat, clean the fish, grill the fish, eat, and then go in the house. I'm not sure that people would do this.
The grill didn't make it.
Yeah. And so I thought it was practical, and as my listeners know, I like practical, but I'm thinking fish cleaning station, maybe not the most beautiful design element, but they didn't end up doing what they originally said they were going to do, did they, Stephen?
Not. They kind of modified it as they went. They wound up blah, blah. Easy for you to say. They built a pergola. They built a pergola, and which is just a structure on the deck, and they had benches in the back corner, so there was seating. They built seating into it. So, and then they had it's so cold in Florida, and we've been hearing that from Brian and Sarah the whole time, is about how cold it is and how you need all these fireplaces and stuff. And so they have a fire pit that was on the deck. And oh, wait a minute, that's not them. They don't think it's cold in Florida at all, but the ambiance of having the fire pit. But yeah, the fish cleaning station.
And the fish cleaning station is built into the pergola, right? It's between two of the poles on the back of the dock.
It's in the front, back front.
Yeah,
it depends on how you're looking at it.
Facing out over the water.
It's closer to where your boat would be. Yeah, so it's facing out to the water. And I saw hoses. I didn't see where it was connected to water, or if there was a pump system. I've done my fair share of fishing and cleaned a sufficient number of fish. And have used fish cleaning stations. I'm used to seeing water. I think back in Manhattan Beach, that deck, there's a lot of people that fish, and there's a fish cleaning station, and I think they bring up, I think there's water on it, and they pump it up from the ocean. You just want to, after cleaning the fish, you want to wash it off, make sure you got all the scales off of it, and clean the blood and everything off, and then move on. So it's something that gets a little dirty. Can get smelly itself, so you'll have to make sure to clean that on a regular basis. But I wasn't exactly sure where they were getting water, or if the intent was to have water. But usually with a fish cleaning station, I think they're the ones I've used.
I think the hose signaled an intent to get water.
Right. Yeah.
So this was the most ambitious thing anyone did on the dock. It provided seating. It provided shade.
There was no ambition on the rest of it.
Practical place.
Any ambition was more than what the other three teams teams did.
And if you didn't want to clean fish, you probably just could use that counter where they had the fish cleaning station, as sort of a bar counter area like Keith and Evan
you could
had.
repurpose it somehow.
Yeah. So the judges really loved this. They said it added an extra room to the house, and it did. It really defined the space, especially when you look to the left of where they are and there's a yoga mat. So
so what you can do is you can come down to use their stuff, and then you can get a yoga mat and sit on it. Whatever. Yeah.
Okay, so big thumbs up. They clearly so far they were the only one to hide the electrical box.
Yeah, and the pergola only cost $520.
Yeah,
so
for
it's not like
$520 they did something that was useful and interesting.
The twins spent $380 on a yoga mat.
Okay, so let's talk about their balcony. So, Stephen, as you already said, it's super cold in Florida. You need fireplaces. You need lots of places to store your clothes. You need hot tubs. No. Wait, it's hot in Florida. You won't use a hot tub. You don't need very many clothes. But apparently,
and you don't need a fireplace.
They did.
Or what?
Anyway, long story short, they put a fireplace on their balcony. I think it looked beautiful. They had a stone finish around it. Yep. Really nice ambiance. I could see sitting out there at night with that fireplace on. And the nice thing is, if we were sitting in the house, you would be able to see the fireplace. It would just have sort of a nice light there. So if you recall, they were the one team that did not put a fireplace in their living room.
But they put one everywhere else. Everywhere. The garage is going to have a fireplace.
But they put a fireplace
I'm surprised there's not one in the elevator, but maybe that's a fire hazard.
And actually, when you think about it, having a fireplace on the deck there as opposed to in the house probably makes sense, right?
Well, it's definitely better use of space. I mean, you see how much room, and it becomes a visual focal point in the living room versus, being more of an ambiance sort of. It's just going to be an ambiance thing either way. But out on the deck, it takes up a little less room, has a little bit more function, and I think it was a smarter decision. Yeah,
and it really maintains their goal of making the view and the water the focal point of the living room, with not two focal points with the fireplace and in the window, right? Yeah. So I thought that was good. They also had a, what do they call it? Counter area or buffet area.
Balcony buffet.
Balcony buffet. So they had a nice countertop. They had a fridge out there and some storage. They did not have a grill on their balcony.
No, some sort of appliances were supposed to be in that buffet, but they didn't call it out, and on the website it doesn't say. So
I'm assuming it's a fridge since they said appliances. I could be wrong.
It was plural, though.
Yeah. And so they have a grill in the patio area, the teppanyaki grill. Again, I'm not big on two grills, but given that it's a teppanyaki grill in the patio, having a regular gas grill on the balcony might not have been a bad choice. But still, I thought it was very nice. They had a nice seating area. And the other thing that I thought they did from a design perspective that was interesting is they kept up those circular patterns. So if you remember, they did the rounded walls in their living room and kitchen. They had the big round lights on the ceiling. And they had a round dining table on the balcony and a round coffee table and really kept that theme from inside to outside. The final thing they did is they did put some sort of insect screen that was automatic that could come down over those sliding glass doors.
From wall to wall.
Wall to wall. So if you were inside in the evening or during the day and you wanted to have those doors open, but you wanted to limit the number of bugs that were getting into your house, we thought that was a really smart choice.
Yeah, that was good. I've got that they spent $85.50 on the fireplace, and the countertop for that balcony buffet was $2,330. So not that is meaningful. It's interesting to see how people spend their money. But yeah, it looked really nice, and the screen was great.
So anyway, Brian and Sarah end up winning $5,000 prize this week to add to the $10,000 they still had left. So now they have $15,000 left to finish their house.
Yep.
Keith and Evan and Paige and Mitch each have $10,000, and Leslie and Lindsley only have $5,000. So this is a big disparity in how much money they have for that last week, and we'll see how that turns out. But Anyway, let's just talk a minute about the judging. Stephen, did you agree that Brian and Sarah were the winners this week?
Yeah, I think a couple other things to say about on their landscaping. They did put landscaping in. Now, granted, the house that's next to them has a lot of plants and stuff too, but they augmented that area. So there's not a lot of yard. I guess you're not expecting anybody to play in the yard and if they're living down here. One thing I did have to call out, and I have to make fun of them for doing this. They put an orange tree in their front yard, and they were like, "Oh, what says Welcome to Florida?" Hey, an orange tree.
Well,
like, okay,
know.
well, whatever. I would disagree, but I mean, why welcome to Florida? The person's living there. I mean, again, it seems like the mentality is that this is going to be a rental, right? Welcome to Florida. Here's your orange tree. Enjoy it for the week that you're here. See you next week.
I do associate oranges with Florida. When my parents went on their honeymoon many years ago, apparently they went to Florida and they sneaked into an orange grove and picked a couple of oranges.
What's the
all these
statute
years
of
later,
limitations on stealing fruit?
I think they're okay now. I think enough years have gone past that they can't be convicted for the orange theft that they did. But I guess since I've always known that story, I've always associated oranges with Florida.
Never knew that your parents were criminals.
This is what you're learning.
I suspected
on this podcast. So anyway, but you are right. Why would you say welcome to Florida if this wasn't being envisioned as a rental?
Yep.
So I think you might have a point there that they're thinking about this as potentially
it just seems to be a consistent theme.
Verbo.
Yeah.
So anything else on this week?
Talking about the judging, we had Michelle Smith Boyd, who was the winners of season 4 along with his partner. He was one of the judge, and then from another show, and I don't know this person, Veronica Valencia, from a show called Revealed. I guess my comment was that based upon her comments in the judging, I'm not likely to watch that show.
I do like Michelle. I was glad that he and Anthony won last year.
He and Anthony, And he was so complimentary of Sarah, she started crying.
Yes, that was really touching at the end. He had very nice things to say about Sarah's design, and she actually did start crying, which you don't usually see that sort of real
she's
emotion
kind of a
in
hard,
Rock the Block.
Yeah, she's kind of a tough nut, but that he really touched her heart there. So
yeah. So we don't know exactly what they're doing next week. They had them all in some sort of outlet that looked like a low-budget IKEA or something.
Well, since the show is primarily sponsored by Wayfair, I'm betting it's some sort of Wayfair storage facility or market or something. That would be my guess. It did kind of. They had shopping carts, and there was a 48-minute timer, which I'm sure it's just there. But I'm sure whatever challenge it is, it's 48 minutes to go and fill up the shopping carts. They said it was the biggest surprise they had. So I'm guessing that there has to be some sort of big ticket items because they've had surprises, of a few $1,000s. So it's got to be something. But
well, I hope it's a way for them to get more money because I'm really concerned with the small amount of money that these teams have that they'll be able to really wow us with their designs next week.
10K in general is
for the amount of space they have to cover and a couple of bathrooms to do. That that's not much.
Yeah, look, going back to my notes and talking about who improved their space. Brian and Sarah only spent $20K this week. They spent the least
and
of
they
any
made
team.
Tons of improvements.
And
really.
they just did it smartly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Paige and Mitch used $30K. Keith and Evan did $30K. Lindsay and Leslie did $50K.
But they did do the solar panels.
But they still used $50K. But anyway, hopefully they do get something that helps them do a better job next week. And,
because I don't watch this show to see cheap designs.
Yeah.
I want luxury, baby. Luxury.
Value add. Yes. So hopefully it is something that they can use, or some way of getting some resources in order to improve their spaces. I mean, next week is the last week, so they can't come in there and do some really cheap, ugly-looking stuff, because that's the pinnacle, right? But between that and the judging of the entire thing. So I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I can't wait till next week. I can't wait to see what they do to finish their homes, and maybe some of them will be able to correct past mistakes like small closets. Cough, cough, Sarah and Brian. But in any case, it should be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for listening. We're glad to have you, and we will talk to you again next week.